try to figure out as many ways to explain the same thing over and over again, rather than just saying, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out. You see coaches do that all the time. It's like, did it change anything?
Not working.
No. An effective cue is a cue that works.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson, and we're down here at CrossFit Stronghold with Ray Regno.
How's it going?
And we're going to be talking about coaching today. Coaching, probably a good bit of weightlifting as well, since Ray is a weightlifting coach. And we've had the joy of spending some time with him at Bergner's Gym, and that's where we met, up in Bonsall. And one of the things that Ray's been really good at is it's like you have these little tricks. What caught my eye is you have all these little tricks, and Mike's like, go talk to Ray. He can fix your hips or knees or whatever. And then you're doing some novel thing in the corner with somebody, and I'm always just kind of watching and learning.
Yeah, if Coach Bergner's dissing athletes off, he's like, I don't know what to do. Go talk to Ray. That's a good sign that we probably should have a conversation with you.
That is a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you actually work with CrossFit weightlifting?
Yeah, I work maybe once a year. The CrossFit weightlifting staff is really deep. I mean, we got a lot of really, really experienced coaches, but whenever something's here in San Diego, Coach B likes me to be there. I'm his mobility guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be working with him this March at the one in Invictus.
What got you to be the mobility guy?
I don't know. I just, when I first started coaching, I knew absolutely nothing. And then I was telling you guys earlier.
You too?
Yeah. I think
It's like the definition of first starting.
Well, I actually only attended maybe 5 CrossFit classes before I started coaching, which is kind of scary. Looking hindsight, like I knew absolutely nothing.
Did you have any background in fitness or movement prior to that?
I did high school wrestling.
Yeah.
And I played sports. I ran track and cross country. Played roller hockey.
Mm-hmm. So what made you think like, oh, I should teach this to people? I just learned it yesterday.
Well, it was more of a thing out of necessity. I helped start this gym back in 2007, and my only contribution really was my name on the lease because I had good credit. And then I hung out for about a week, and then I pieced out and did other stuff. And then about 5 years into the business was failing, and my name was on the lease and everything, so I was on the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of necessity, I came back. I actually intended that day to shut down the business. I said, we're 3 months behind on rent. We owe about $15,000. Let's just cut it and kill it.
Yeah.
And then when I got here, I walked in the door. My brother-in-law looks at me. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm not really sure." And then Ace, the guy who was running our CrossFit program at the time, he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm not really sure." My sister walks in about 2 hours later. She's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I think I'm supposed to take over operations." And so that's what I did. I was here this was back in November of 2011. We opened the gym in October 2007. I was hands off that entire time, that middle section. I came back. I didn't know anything. I was just helping out Ace. He was running our program at the time. I got my level 1 in December of 2011. Driving out to Arizona for my level 1, I felt like we're going to get evicted. Like, I just afraid we're going to get evicted. Didn't really know what to do. So I ended up helping Ace run our program. He was here till April before I finally had to kind of pull the plug. Like, we were paying him to be here, but we still weren't paying the rent.
Right.
And it was rough because we've grown the business. We actually got another 20, 30 extra members, and things were looking better, but we were still not paying the rent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happens in business sometimes.
Yeah.
We've noticed. It's definitely happened to us before too, is where, you may hit a hiccup and then it takes a lot longer to come out of a hole.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when gym owners kind of hit that dip in the road, it's like, oh, things are improving. It's like, well, you got a little bit of catch up to do.
Yeah.
So it like triples the duration of a lot of things.
Yeah, it was really hard because I had to make the hard decision to let him go. And I remember sitting down with him in this area here when it used to be an office. You see that platform that used to be an office in there. We sat down and go, "Hey, Ace, I'm sorry, we can't do this anymore." And, he took it personally, obviously. I mean, we became pretty good friends during that time. And he took it hard, and he went and left, and then half the gym left with him. And then he actually owns Mighty CrossFit, which is just down the street from us.
Nice.
You know, there was a little bit of a rift for a little while, but we're friends again. Everything's cool. You know, I refer people over there. Some people have left me, have gone to him, and it's cool. I'm really big on referring people to other gyms. If we're not a good fit, go somewhere else. It doesn't threaten me.
Yeah.
You know, but literally when I let him go that same night, I said, okay, well, here's my first day coaching a class. I don't know what I'm doing. And I attended maybe 5 CrossFit classes before that. And so
Wow.
literally someone who knew nothing. I took my level 1 and I attended a few classes with my brother-in-law when he ran the program here before. And so the fact that I'm coaching other trainers is weird.
Yeah. So how'd you get from there, not knowing anything, to where you are now? Because you're on L1 staff, is that correct? And
Yeah.
then you help out with CrossFit weightlifting,
Uh-huh.
and you know you got CrossFit Stronghold. You have a very strong weightlifting presence here. You got jiu-jitsu here, and you know you're a killer gym now years later. So how'd you get from there to where you are now?
I became obsessed with the CrossFit Journal and basically anything I could look at that taught me how to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so every single day when I wasn't coaching, I was in the CrossFit Journal. I was watching videos, I was reading articles, I was learning as much as I could. I started following Kelly Starrett on MWAT on YouTube, and anything I could find, I would suck it up and just digest it and just try to teach to someone. And that's kind of my philosophy. I've learned it, I want to give it away. And that's kind of how I got into that.
Yeah, you were talking about how a lot of times people, you know, maybe they get their level 1 and then they start coaching, and then it kind of stops there for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's not it becomes very passive, or there's no reason. I was talking to one of my coaches just the other day, and he was saying he's also a judo coach, and he was talking about the judo coaches in his country, which is Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about how a lot of them, they don't go to and get certified or get any further education unless their certification's about to be up, and they've got to get that piece of paper so they can keep coaching, and so they'll be allowed to keep doing it. And you've noticed that happens with coaches sometimes, or
Yeah.
coaches that own gyms come in here and then they're surprised that you're still actively coaching them.
Yeah. I think the big thing is where it really stems from the desire to coach. Are you here to make money and just see everyone as a dollar sign? Or for me, I look at people, I go, I want to help you be better. And coaching for me, or any sort of form of leadership, there's a ton of responsibility there. Like, I could potentially break this person, and I don't want to do that. And I've come to realize that everyone moves differently, everyone is built differently. So the more ways that you can explain the same thing, the more effective you'll be as a coach. And so what I do is I follow other coaches. That was one of the things that really helped me, was I would shadow other coaches and I would steal cues. Try to figure out as many ways to explain the same thing over and over again, rather than just saying, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out, hey, knees out. You see coaches do that all the time. It's like, did it change anything?
Not working.
No. You know, an effective cue is a cue that works. I've
Right.
used some very inappropriate cues before, and those work, and it was weird, and I wouldn't use it at a level 1 course. We're not allowed to do that. But, you know, sometimes, you know,
So they're like there's a set of verbal cues that are allowed, and
Yeah,
a set of verbal cues that are not allowed.
we don't want them to be inappropriate or offensive. So but those are the ones I keep out of the seminar. But sometimes here, it depends on who's in front of me. If I know that they'll respond to a particular cue, I might use that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. A good cue is one that works. Right?
We're not at the level 1 cert right now, so you're allowed to share any cue you want. So
Okay.
do you have any examples of what you're talking about?
So I was in Mexico teaching a level 1, a weightlifting course in Monterrey with JP. And I had this translator, and she was following me around, and I got kind of impatient with her because she talked really quietly, and she was really slow to translate. And so this guy kept banging the bar off his hips, and I go, mira, mira, mira. Este es para la cama y este es para la barra. And the girl looks at me, she's like, what did you just say? And I'm like, he gets it. He's like, oh, I get it. So I'm not trying to hump the bar out this way. I'm trying to, or like Klockow says, this is for sex, this is for bar. Same exact thing, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, effective cue is one that works, and that kid remembered it. The next day, he's like, oh, I'm doing that again. And he even sent me a message like a few months later. He sent me a video, and I was like, look, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, well, cool, there you go. And so sometimes the most memorable cue is going to be the one that helps somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if somebody just got their level 1 and they're excited to be coaching, and this happens a lot, and we know it's happening a lot because there's 4 seminars going on every weekend, and they're sold out, and there's about over 200 people a week
Yeah.
getting certified. There's not that many gyms. There's a lot of people just going out there and starting to coach that are new. What is your recommendation? You've got the CrossFit Journal, which is a really good place for people to go.
Yep.
And you've gone and shadowed other coaches. Like, is there like a first place you would go after a level 1 now that you've kind of seen the whole field?
Biggest thing is, just like we said, go shadow somebody. So shameless self-promotion. I always tell level 1 participants, if you want to come shadow me, come shadow me. Come to my classes, watch me coach, come with questions, ask questions afterwards. That's totally free. I do that for free. So if you're a level 1 coach in San Diego and want to come out, or you're in Southern California, it's always an opportunity that's there for you. But big thing is, just go shadow someone. Shadow as many people as you can. You know, one of the things I do at Coach B's is I'll just sit there and watch him coach someone else, and then I'll see if I see what he sees, and if I don't see what he saw, then I'll make a note of that. Or if he uses a cue, I've collected so many cues from him every Wednesday. Every Wednesday I will go home with a new cue, right? And I think that's the most important thing. I try to tell trainers all the time, figure out as many ways you can to explain the same thing. You'll be a whole lot more effective than just saying the same cue over and over, and the person just keeps making the same mistake.
Yeah. There's and then you also have clients that have been with you for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Or you get somebody who is a gym owner that comes in from out of town, and you're continuing to coach these people. I know one of the things that I've experienced this myself when I was running a facility, and I've watched a lot of other coaches do this. Is you have a client that's been with you for 18 months, and and you have all this fresh people who need a lot of attention, and then you have someone that's been there for a while that might not feel they need this attention, and it's almost this a breakdown in the relationship between the coach and the athlete, as the athlete starts feeling like they don't need to be coached as much, and so the coach doesn't feel as welcome, and there becomes this break in the relationship, so that the athlete's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. What's your experience like coaching people who are more advanced and people who are good movers and making them better?
That one's a hard one. Sometimes you do have those athletes who are just very resistant to change. And I think it works itself out here where people who don't like feedback, they don't stay. Because I'm going to give everyone feedback. I'm going to yell feedback across the room. The guy in that corner over there thinks he's hiding, but I still see that he's collapsing his knees in. I'm going to yell it from across the room. And I think that's one thing that coaches need to do is they need to be present. I'm not a very tall guy, but I make sure that everyone knows I'm in the room. Like, hey, I'm watching you. I'm going to make you move better. I think I've developed a culture here where everyone understands that, like, it's never going to be good enough for Ray. Sometimes people will come in, it's like their first 2 months, they're here.
Want to feel like you're not enough?
Yeah, come hang out
Ray
over
will
here.
never love you.
One of my interns was like, man, I used to train at Invictus. I came over here, I thought it was all amazing, and then Ray humbled me my first day.
Yeah.
I mean, he always likes to tell people he made me squat with the girls. And I go, well, dude, you were butt winking the bottom, you were collapsing all over the place, your knees were like together.
Yeah.
Those are very fundamental things that we need to fix.
Yeah.
And now he's one of my interns. He helps coach. The big thing is that everyone needs to understand that we're always a work in progress. And I think that once we feel like we've arrived, then, you're gone.
Yeah, there's no such thing as finished. Like,
Yeah.
you're never strong enough. Your technique's never good enough.
Exactly.
You're never mobile enough. Like, there's somewhere to go, even if it's just like a fraction of a percent in each one of these categories.
Yep.
Like, the pursuit of mastery is this never-ending thing. Mastery is an asymptote. We talked about that a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're never done. You've never truly mastered anything. It's the pursuit of mastery that you should be pursuing.
Yeah, there's this phrase that we use in the CrossFit course where it says infinitely refinable. And that's everything is infinitely refinable. You could, you might think you know something about something and you'll meet someone and be like, oh, whoa, like I never thought of it from that perspective. And also because everyone is built differently. I mean, everyone has different limb lengths and everyone has different structures of the hip. What works for one person isn't going to work for the same person, for another person. And so we got to be constantly learning because you might get that one person who's going to break all the rules.
Yeah.
And so that's my main motivation is to keep learning because I want to keep making people better and better.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned lately is I was trying to, I found myself getting, I guess anytime I was pushing the limits of my strength, I would get hurt, and I was really training in a couple different modalities. It would be CrossFit or weightlifting or gymnastics, which can live underneath CrossFit, and then I started looking around, and it wasn't until I started talking to other people. I wasn't picking up books I was watching some videos online, and I started talking to people who were training in other modalities. Like the latest one that the first time someone mentioned it to me, I was like, nah, and like, no, not for me. And then now I was doing it this past weekend, and I found a lot of value in it, which was acro yoga.
Oh yeah.
And so someone first mentioned that, I was like, I'm not really sure that's going to be beneficial. I think guys are just doing that to pick up chicks, which does work. But and I found a lot of benefit of that. And for me, if you feel like you're stagnant, I think just going into a completely different movement practice can be highly enlightening. You
Yeah.
can start over really quick and just learn from a completely different perspective, and the puzzle that you've been building gets a lot bigger really fast. That's been my experience.
Yeah, case in point for me, I sprained my ankle in late December playing roller hockey, and squatting for me is life, and I couldn't squat. And this year so far, I've benched more than I've squatted.
Yeah.
And I never really knew how to bench. Like, you learn how to bench in high school, but we never were doing it right. And like I started consulting all my powerlifter friends, like, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. And like learning how to brace. Like people will think, oh, you're arching your back. That's wrong. Not if you keep your brace tight and it doesn't move. And then like just the idea of, you've seen people benching, their feet go flying off the floor. Like, well, no, that's wrong. You should be like pushing through the ground like you're trying to kick someone in the shins.
They're usually giggling when they do that.
or they're really yeah. But like there's so many little nuances there. You're like, I never knew that was part of the bench press. Like squeezing your shoulder blades together, being on your traps. It's pressing with the lats. Someone actually used that cue on me 5 years ago. Press with your lats. I have no clue what that means. And now that I've actually learned how to bench, I'm like, dude, my lats are smoked all the time.
Yeah.
And so like that was kind of a new adventure for me, like going into a realm that I wasn't familiar with.
I feel like it takes a while for people to learn how to use their lats when they're pressing, like you just mentioned with bench press. But I feel like it's just as relevant with overhead press or overhead squatting. Like knowing how to activate your lats when you're catching a snatch or something like that.
Yeah.
Is a skill that people don't get on their first day. It takes a lot of experience for you to be able to feel that.
Yeah, and that actually leads into one of my favorite cues I've been using over the last 2 months.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
Cliffhanger.
All right, today we're talking about the number one exercise that you probably are not doing that'll help you pull under the bar faster when you're snatching. All right, and that movement is
The muscle snatch.
Woo! All right, if you've never seen a muscle snatch, Mike's going to give you a quick demo so you know what we're talking about. It looks kind of like a power snatch, but it's not quite the same thing. You'll see that once the bar gets to Mike's hips, he does extend his hip aggressively, but after that, he kind of is just standing up. Once the bar gets to his hip, he kind of just stands up aggressively and then uses his arms to pull it overhead. He's not extending and then coming down and catching like you would on a power snatch. He's obviously not getting all the way into a full squat. So really, one of the benefits here is that Mike's aggressively pulling with his arms to get the bar from his hips to all the way overhead. So if you're a person that has a lot of trouble continuing to pull on the bar to pull you under the weight, then muscle snatches are probably a very good option. So one more time, Mike's going to do it one more quick demo. Now that you can see, or now that you're aware of that, and you'll be better able to see the pull from the hip to overhead, you can see that Mike's not doing a power snatch. He's doing a muscle snatch, which is distinctly different. Beautiful. All right, you can think of this very similar to how you think about pull-ups. We kind of have two distinct variations of pull-ups. We have strict pull-ups and we have kipping pull-ups, and they're used for different things. So you can think about a power snatch or a regular snatch as being a kipping pull-up. You're trying to get as much momentum as possible on a kipping pull-up, where you get that momentum, then you kind of float up to the bar. A power snatch is very similar to that, where once you get to here and you get that extension, the bar's kind of weightless as you pull yourself under and you kind of pull your body underneath the bar. A power snatch is more similar, a muscle snatch, which is what we're talking about specifically on this video, is more similar to a strict pull-up. On a strict pull-up, you're hanging under the bar. You don't produce any momentum by getting a kip or any amount of swinging, and you just use your muscles strictly to pull yourself all the way up to the bar, or rather vertical, obviously. And then for a muscle snatch, it's similar. You get a little bit of momentum, but once you get to here, it's all arms pulling on the bar to pull the bar overhead. You're not pulling your body underneath the bar. You're pulling the bar over your body with your arms. So again, if you're a person that has a lot of trouble with pulling on the bar, then this is a good movement for you. We don't often teach it to beginners so much, mostly because beginners, they often pull too much on the bar with their arms and they're not using their legs enough, whereas once you get some experience under your belt and you become more intermediate, we find that some people, they worry about their leg drive too much, and then once they get to here and they're kind of fully extended with their legs, they kind of just fall under the weight and they're not pulling on the bar enough. And for those athletes, muscle snatches tend to work very well because they have the leg drive but they're not using their arms enough, and so we give them a drill with muscle snatches to make them use their arms a little bit more. And then hopefully, ideally, in the end, you're using your legs to their full extent, and then you're using your arms to their full extent, where the legs drive the weight up, and then your arms drive you under the weight as fast as possible. And if you can do that, then obviously you can snatch as much weight as you possibly could. So that's one specific way that we like to use the muscle snatches for our lifters.
All right, so you saw Mike before doing basically a full muscle snatch. That's probably the most common version you can do, but there's many other variations within that. If you look at Mike right now, he can basically pull just from a standing position. This might be something you would do more like in your warm-up, okay, just with an empty bar like that, where he's doing just kind of like a modified overhead press. A modified
we like
overhead
to press around here.
You press a lot of weight. A modified overhead press, which has a lot of external rotation, has kind of a side benefit doing it super strict like that. He could also pull from, actually he could even do it from there. He could do it from squatting quad if you wanted to. We do this in our warm-ups a lot. Or he could do it from the hang if you want to do it from the hang. So he's just bent over in the hang, get to that power position and pull. He could do it as a stop snatch where he starts with the bar on the ground, where he's at mid-shin and he pauses above the knee or below the knee and then finishes the movement. So you can still do a muscle snatch from any other position you want to. You could do it sitting if you wanted to, since you would just be sitting and pulling like that, very similar to the standing version we showed at the very beginning. So lots of different variations. In the next section, we're going to come back and talk about how to do each technique specifically. All right, so how do you do a muscle snatch? So if Mike pulls the bar up and just stands there normal with a snatch grip, we'll talk about the arm mechanics first. So again, part of the reason we like to do muscle snatches, in addition to simply working the muscles that you're going to be using to pull the bar overhead, is that it gives you a really good bar path. So if you look at Mike from the side, as he does a muscle snatch, he does it just like he would snatch. Elbows up and back, and then he rotates over top, and the bar stays very close to his body. You can't really do, especially a heavy muscle snatch, with the bar getting out in front of you. For all the people that loop the bar in front of them, where they have kind of straight arms and they do that big loop, once the bar gets heavy, if Mike puts the 15s back on, then the bar is not going to be able to get away from him, because the further away from him the bar gets, the heavier it seems to be, and it gets a lot harder. So it'll correct itself simply by adding a little bit of weight. You'll automatically want to keep the bar as close as possible, simply because it's way harder not to do it like that. But if you're doing a regular snatch and the bar is essentially weightless as it's passing this area, and you don't really have to pull on it very much, then you don't really get that instant feedback like you do on a muscle snatch specifically, where you're having to pull very hard with your arms. All right, so that's how your arm mechanics will look. As far as your lower body mechanics, again, if Mike does a demo from mid-shin where the bar would be, if he had plates on it, all the mechanics of the snatch remain the same as far as first pull, transition, and second pull. But if he does it in slow motion, he gets to the power position here, then, especially again, if he's doing this heavy, he's going to get to full hip extension, but his heels are going to stay on the ground. And then from here, once he's basically all the way standing up straight, his arms take over, his hips stay locked out straight. He's squeezing his butt together nice and hard. That way he doesn't re-bend, because there's no pulling yourself under the weight during a muscle snatch. There's only pulling the weight over you. That's one of the key distinctions. So if he does that a little bit faster, kind of like half speed, you can see he stands up, and then gets to a full locked out, hip, knees, ankle's not really locked out, but hip, knees, and then heels on the ground, and the arms take over, and he drives it overhead.
The common mistake is that people will get here, and they have a hard time not getting back under like a power snatch. Mm-hmm. So really, keeping in mind that you need to keep those glutes squeezed at the top is going to keep you from re-bending. So squeeze all the way up.
Yeah, once your knee and your hip gets straight, it stays straight. So you get to here, and then you just stay there and pull arms only. All right, so when should you do muscle snatches? You have a couple options. Warm-ups, as we said, doing it with an empty bar. It's a good way to just get ready to go do heavier snatches when you're doing the full movements. You also can do them as a main lift, or you can do them as assistance work. Depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to include them as a main lift, a good day to do that is a day where you still want to get a good workout, but you're trying to probably have a little bit of a lighter day. You don't want to go for a 1 rep max snatch. You might go for a 3 RM muscle snatch where kind of by default, even with 100% effort, you automatically are going a little bit lighter. Your 3 RM muscle snatch might be 150 pounds versus your full snatch, which might be 225 or whatever. So it's a good way to automatically go a little bit lighter but still get some really solid work in. Or you could do it as assistance work after you do the main lifts, your snatches and your cleans, your jerks, your front squats, back squats, maybe in some of your other assistance work like your snatch pulls, your snatch high pulls, or whatever else you're doing that day. And now you're on to doing the other things in your workout that are kind of less important for a weightlifter but are still important, like pull-ups and weighted push-ups, maybe you're bench pressing, whatever. You could include 3 sets of 5 of muscle snatches as assistance work. Mike also has another unique example that for some of the advanced lifters could use.
Yeah, I like to do like a 5 rep max on muscle snatch, then do some drop sets, so drop down to 5 or 10% of that 5 rep max, and I'm going to then basically pre-fatigue the shoulders a little bit, like Doug was talking about. Minimize the weight but maximize the effort, so it'll be really difficult, but you're not going to put yourself under a huge load. Then do some work off the blocks. So if you have trouble like really getting underneath the bar, you're going to pre-fatigue the shoulders a little bit, so that way you really have a max effort pulling underneath the bar, but you're not going to go real heavy doing it, and you're able to train like getting under what feels like a heavy load. So it's a really great way to kind of train getting underneath the bar without going heavy, and it's a great way to build up shoulders specifically for snatch.
All right, if you like this video, you can also go to barbellshrugged.com, click on the Technique WOD tab at the top of the page. We have more videos just like this in the library. Also, we have a free 50 some odd page ebook that you can download at flightweightlifting.com. It has examples of programming for weightlifters. It has examples of frequently asked questions that we get from our weightlifters. It also has links to a 6-part video series that we have for snatches and for clean jerks. So it's an awesome resource, doesn't cost you anything, and you can get that at flightweightlifting.com. We'll see you another day.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrugged.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, Technique WOD, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now. Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.
And we're back. Ray, your competition directly across the street must be...
They sound intense.
It's super intense. I don't know if...
Die Hard Pilates.
Everyone always mentions that. So the story behind that is that she's a former Marine, and she used to teach at this place down the street called Hardcore Pilates or something. My girlfriend actually teaches over there, so if you like Pilates, she's over there.
So we can't make fun of it too much.
Not too much. I mean, the name's interesting, but yeah.
I have a friend that does Pilates, and it's a back and forth thing.
It's hard. It's actually different.
I've yet to do it. You know what, though? That's the thing, is because I've been making fun of it, I'm now going to end up in a Pilates class.
You should try it. Now
I'm going to go.
It's actually pretty interesting, especially like with what we know about movement. I remember going over there and I understood everything that they wanted to do, and it's kind of neat because you'd use a lot of with the reformer machine thing. We do a lot of funky like,
is that the Chuck Norris thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Total Gym, or what is it?
Yeah,
that
Total
thing.
Gym. Yeah.
It kind of looks like a total gym, but you have these little springs to add the resistance. It's a lot harder than it looks. But a lot of basic concepts like posterior pelvic tilt, keeping everything nice and engaged, and you do these weird squats where sometimes your feet are like this, and you're pushing off your heels, and then you're pushing off your toes, and you're turning your feet in this like this. And actually, my first date with my girlfriend was she did a private session with me there. And she was
That was
like,
your first date?
that was our first date.
Okay.
So she go, a couple more reps. And I go, okay, so that means 2 reps, right? And then she's like, okay, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm like, dude, couple, this is
You
hard.
said a couple.
Yeah, you said a couple. But, I mean, that was hard. I was sweating.
She's not very good with maintaining expectations.
The numbers thing, but yeah, she's a really great instructor. So if you want to do some Pilates, she's over there.
I've done it. Put my foot in my mouth.
Yep.
I'll be doing Pilates in no time.
So
or you could do some bar classes too. She teaches bar if you want to try that.
That sounds more up my alley.
That's
Yeah.
actually super hard too. There's all kinds of interesting like workout methodologies that we never. They're so very different from CrossFit and weightlifting.
Yeah, I've got a couple friends that it's like because CrossFit and weightlifting is such a. I mean, they're the epitome of strength sports, really.
Yeah.
You know, between that and powerlifting, what would be the opposite of that? You know, ballet.
Yeah.
I have a couple friends that have been doing ballet just to balance
That's
out all
interesting.
the strength training. You know, something that enhances more finesse and grace and that type of movement. And they've talked about there's muscles and their glutes and stuff that they just there's no way I would have trained this in the gym. It
Yeah,
was only going to
exactly.
happen in ballet class.
Yeah. And that was my experience with Pilates too. Is like, you know, I can squat close to 400. Why can't I push this stupid little thing across the, you know?
And some blonde girl over there has just got it moving.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, hold this position here, and then put your arms up like this. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like sometimes she'll post videos on Instagram, like doing these things. Like I'd probably kill myself trying to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but then coming back over here, it's like it's different. You know, at first when I first saw her squat, I was like, ooh. She squats way better now, but a lot of it is because with the reformer, you're on a stable platform. Like you don't need to engage your
fixed.
midline. It's fixed.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. So at first it's kind of like, it's not so pretty, but now she squats like a boss. So it's just kind of like teaching people how to change their mindset and figure out how to fire the right tissues that you need. It's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we've teased the shit out of people. How do we get them to turn on their lats while overhead? This was actually something. This is the first cue I think you gave me that turned on some light bulbs.
Okay, so most people are upper trap dominant. You know, your shoulder looks for stability. It goes in almost 360 degrees, right? Most people, their natural reaction is to shrug the shoulders. And this is what I see a lot of times when people are overhead squatting, they're shrugging their shoulders here. And then they can't get external rotation of the shoulders. But then when you relax the traps, and all of a sudden you have more room to rotate, and then now you're feeling it in the lats. And so that's like been my favorite cue for the last 2 months is, hey, less traps, more lats.
Mhm.
And one of the things I like to do is actually give someone a PVC pipe and have them hold the PVC pipe like this. And now you really can't shrug because you're anatomically stuck in this position.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that as an assessment piece. Like, it's not just as like a drill to help them understand where they're supposed to feel it, but it also helps me assess, is the shoulder really the problem?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've noticed getting an empty barbell, going more weight, and doing that supinated overhead squat, getting to the bottom and feeling my T-spine, just going, oh, it's stuck.
Yeah.
The T-spine is not moving.
Yeah, you can't
So
pull
it's
the bar
not-
behind your head.
It's not a shoulder problem. It's I need to work on my posture.
Yeah, it's a great tool, and I learned that from Todd Widman at a level 1 course. My first time as an intern for HQ, in which case I also bombed that weekend. But bombing was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me
I
to
hear
really...
a lot of people bomb it their first time.
Yeah, I've
it's
heard,
not a
like-
common thing. It's not like people show up and just nail it the first
Yeah.
time.
when you were presenting, you bombed? What do you mean?
Well, so the way it works, the internship works, is back then it was your first weekend, you just shadow the trainer and you just watch, right? And the second weekend, you come back for a seminar. Back then, they let you teach the whole breakout session. So for the squats, you go over the air squat, the front squat, the overhead squat. Well, the timeline calls for 55 minutes of instruction. I finished in 20 minutes.
Yep.
And I looked at Todd and I go, hey, is there anything you want to add? And he goes, yes, I love this. Because, I was here, I was helping Ace coach, and I thought maybe I knew how to teach people how to squat. And, I had a lot of people who didn't know how to move. And then I got 10 good movers. And I was like, well, what do I do with you? It looks pretty good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he jumps in and he goes, this is what I love. I love really making good movers move better.
Nice.
And that was a light bulb moment for me.
Mhm.
And face melted. He's doing all these drills, including this supinated grip hand overhead squat. And what that does is it locks the shoulders into that good position and helps the athlete feel like this is where it's supposed to be. Elbow pits are facing in, armpits are facing forward, and you can't move because you're locked in. You're holding it that way.
Yeah.
And then what he did was, okay, now leave your shoulders where they are. Now turn your hands this way, where that's a regular grip, and see if it falls apart. And one of the things that I learned later on as I've been coaching, like maybe 3 years into coaching, was that for most people, it's not a mobility issue. People are always like, oh, it's my mobility. My mobility sucks. Most of the time, it's actually just motor control. Everyone wants to use the mobility thing as a crutch. I had one lady in particular who came in here. She couldn't squat to save her life for the first 2 months. But she could hold onto a pole and get to the very bottom of a squat. Now, in hindsight, I look at that and go, well, she had all the adequate ankle mobility, all the adequate hip mobility, and she could have an upright torso. But as soon as she let go of the pole, she fell over. So was mobility really ever her problem? No, it was motor control. Like her tissues didn't know how to fire and hold that position. The same thing is true in the overhead squat. A lot of times people will get to about here and they get lazy and then they roll their shoulders that way. And they're trying to shrug, and now that puts them even more into this position. So going back to that cue, it's like, hey, relax the shoulders, now rotate your shoulders. Relax your traps, rotate the shoulders this way. Mm-hmm. And most of the time that fixes a ton of people, and they just don't realize that they're trying to find stability in the wrong place. Really what we want to do is we want to use that lower trap and then the lats to support the load.
Yeah. What do you think causes the upper trap development? I mean, I think it's common in most CrossFitters and weightlifters. We're doing a lot of overhand movement, whether it's pull-ups or presses. Is that what's causing it?
I think for a lot of people, they're just used to being in this slump position.
Yeah.
Like they're at a desk. They're on a desk all day long. We're on our phone texting. We're shrugging, and we find our stability that way. And that's what our body gets used to. And then it's like a rubber band, right? If the rubber band's on stretch all the time, what does that do? It makes the tissues weak, or the rubber band weak. Same thing is true about these tissues here. If they're constantly on length, now they're weak. So your body's going to default to finding where it actually finds the most help, which is that shrugged up position. So teaching people like be down here, so keeping the scapula retracted and depressed, and actually teaching people how to retract their scapula is going to be a whole lot more beneficial for that position.
Yeah, the motor control conversation is interesting to me. I was hanging out with a friend, Aaron Alexander, this past weekend. He has the Align podcast. You should check that out. But one of the things he was talking about was, I'm going to butcher this, but it was neuromotor amnesia.
Yeah.
That people suffer from is, so at some point, maybe because you're sitting and you're in that shrug position, or when you're sitting, your ass muscles are being pushed off to the side. Mm-hmm. Then when you go to use them, your body basically forgets. It loses the memory of being able to fire those muscles.
Yeah.
And so now you start having these compensation. Well, I'm still going to get to the bottom of the squat. I'm still going to get in the overhead position. But because my body doesn't even know how to fire these muscles, there's an amnesia to it. And now these things that aren't even turning on.
Yep.
And so now you have to repattern. It's not about mobility. It's about repatterning
exactly
the motor units. And so it's okay. Now, when we go overhead, how do we keep the upper traps from firing so hard? Mm-hmm. And the lower traps, how do we get them to actually turn on in the lats?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a case of use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'll tell people, and they don't like this answer when they ask me, hey, how do I get better at the overhead squat? The answer is overhead squat. Like Teresa Larson, you guys had her on a little while ago. She used to make me take an empty barbell and just hold the bottom of a squat for 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then stand up and then repeat for 10 reps. And that's how I got good at the overhead squat, was getting used to that position, learning how to get my torso upright, keeping my shoulders in a good position. And that's what I'll have people do. At the level 1 course, we use this thing called squat therapy. And people leave the course and never use it again. But it's an amazing tool to help someone learn how to squat. Mm-hmm. For most people, what they need to do is just get to the spot where they lose position and then just stay there for a little while.
Spend some time there.
Spend some time there. Let your neuromuscular connections rewire so it realizes how to stabilize there. And then once that's good, then go a little bit lower. And then stop. We start to shake and then figure it out and then go a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower. Eric Preston's a flow master for CrossFit headquarters, and he said that muscles that fire together are wired together, the other way around. Muscles that are wired together fire together, and a lot of times we just need to teach them how to get wired again. Mm-hmm. I was on the news a while ago where they're talking about the squat. People are any human under the age of 2 years old, what do they do when they see something on the ground? Perfect squat,
Oh yeah.
right? We're genetically wired to do that. But, you know, when we're 3 years old, we go to school, preschool, what do? We sit in these amazing things called chairs, which limits our range of motion to about 90 degrees. So what happens? We get that neuromuscular amnesia where our body doesn't know what to do past 90 degrees. And that's why people struggle to get in the bottom of the squat.
So the example you used a second ago where you're squatting down to the lowest point where you were in a perfect position, you're kind of hanging out in that position, and then you tried to like slowly move lower and lower and lower, again, achieving a perfect position every time to rebuild that pattern. How would you do that with the overhead position that we just talked about, where you know, if we're doing an overhead squat or something similar, where people are upper trap dominant and maybe they're in anterior tilt with their scapula and they're all out of position? Do you have any similar drills for the overhead position?
Oh yeah, we do a 10-second tempo down. Or even longer sometimes. I'll just have people put the PVC pipe overhead, and they start to go down. Okay, stop. And I'll say freeze, and they'll go down a little lower, and they start to go here. I go stop, fix it, and then a little bit lower, and they lose it again. Stop, fix it, and just it's a stop, fix, stop, fix, stop, fix. And slowing people down is how do I say this? Why do people kip a muscle up? Because they don't have the control, right? Everyone wants to skip that position where they lack control. But you've seen those videos where people do like a 1-minute muscle up, right? They're going up for 30 seconds. They pause at the transition and do like a 10-second transition and they get to the top. That's a very, very pure expression of control. People speed through things because they have no control. So slowing them down and forcing them to actually control every millimeter is huge for them.
Yeah, and CrossFit, well, you know, CrossFit and weightlifting, both, there's kipping and CrossFit with the pull-up and with a jerk and weightlifting, and everything is very dynamic and explosive movement. And I think that a lot of time, like, CrossFit came along and presented the explosive movement to the market. You know, before that, people weren't doing any of that, and it was missing. And do you feel that there's been maybe a little bit too far of a swing into that dynamic movement and not enough time spent in tempo and static work?
Yeah, I definitely do agree that sometimes people jump too fast into intensity. And that's where sometimes CrossFit gets a bad name. Oh, people are getting hurt. They're doing things wrong. But one of the primary tenets of CrossFit is mechanics, then consistency, and then intensity. And I think what's falling apart is that coaches are forgetting how to do progressions. You know, we teach progressions at the level 1 course. It's like, hey, the progressions are great. Use them. And you ask the average level 1 trainer, hey, what's the push press progression? And they can't tell you what it is. And I think that's the disconnect, is that that coaches are not being diligent about teaching progressions. You know, if someone here in my gym, if you can't do a strict muscle up, you have no business doing doing kipping.
Yeah, the videos of people doing muscle ups where they're swinging and it's almost like they're aiming for that spot.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, if I could just land right here, then I can do my ring dip.
Right.
But if I am like 1 degree off, you know, my fucking arm just flies straight out, and I'm like hoping I don't do a face plant.
Dude, those are nasty videos. Whenever a ring gets behind somebody's back and they're still hanging onto it.
Yeah, it's like, dude,
waiting for the shoulder to pop out of socket.
just
hoping it will.
Not strong enough to be in position, but flowing right through it. So
and that's a tricky thing, is that like CrossFit emphasizes mechanics, consistency, and intensity, and then people leave and it's not a sexy term for them. They want people to go jump straight to intensity, and that's when things go wrong.
So do you guys have set progressions for most of the main movements here at Stronghold?
Yeah, I use the level 1 progressions.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll add, for like the muscle up, sometimes I'll add in little drills and stuff that kind of supplement the progressions, but I find a lot of value in the progressions that are already written.
For someone that's never seen any of those progressions, they don't have a level 1 cert, they don't even know, they've maybe never even heard the term progression. Like, what does that look like? What does the progression for like a front squat look like, or a clean, or any example you'd like?
Well, for the clean, we just teach the Bergner warm-up, right? We teach the down position, we teach the finish position, we teach the elbows high outside, we teach the muscle clean. And so all those pieces, they meld into what looks like a clean, right? So my members, they know what a progression is. They might not know all the steps from the top of their head, but they're reminded all the time. And that's why my athletes move well.
Yeah.
You know, my athletes might not be the fastest or the strongest in San Diego, but they move freaking well.
Yeah.
Because we drill into them all the time, like relentlessly drilling positions.
Well, I've been coaching CrossFit since '07, and one of the things that I notice is a lot of times there is a little bit of pressure, or not a little bit, there's a lot of pressure from the clients a lot of times because they're online.
Yeah.
They're watching people, they're watching other people in the gym, and they want to do what the other person's doing.
Yeah.
They want to belong.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, if I can't do this movement or I can't do this amount of weight, then I'm not going to belong.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of times coaches wind up caving under the pressure of a client going, is like a coach may go, look, I know you shouldn't be doing kipping pull-ups. You know, maybe you should do some ring rows instead. You know, it's going to be better for your shoulders. But the client, I've had them where they just fight you tooth and nail.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fucking grabbing that band. I'm going to wrap it around the bar and I'm going to swing all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
And you try to stop me type of thing. Do you have clients like that, or do you think that you've kept it under control from the very beginning, and so you don't end up with spoiled clients?
Most people like that don't end up staying with me.
Gotcha.
I crushed their soul, I think, and they don't want to stay. Because I'm relentless about that stuff, and I tell them it's not safe. I don't want you doing that. I mean, there's a couple of times where in the open there'll be muscle ups, and if someone doesn't have strict muscle ups, I'm like, okay, fine, go ahead and do it. And just kind of pray they don't hurt themselves. But for the most part, my athletes understand the culture here. It's like we value good movement over anything else. It's not worth doing that movement now and then being broken for the next 6 months and not be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's something that I preach to people when they come in the door. I think as far as my community goes, it's been self-regulated that way. Everyone understands that I'm here to keep you safe. I'm here to help you move better. I'm here to help you, and they understand that heart. And so they don't push back on me too much.
Yeah.
So
sign of a good leader. Sounds like you're setting the culture. I think a lot of times if coaches feel like things are out of control, they could look at maybe how they could show it better.
Yeah. I think the big thing is also making sure that the athlete understands your perspective. And I was telling my coaches yesterday in our staff meeting was, hey, we coach people physically, but we're also kind of like therapists.
Mm-hmm.
People come here for a reason, and the way that people react in the gym is a reflection of how they react to things in real life. So we're throwing adversity at them. How they respond to it here shows how they respond to things in real life. And sometimes it's more than just teaching them the movement. It's really just building the relationship with them.
Yeah.
And once you've got that rapport with someone, they're more likely to listen and understand, hey, the reason why I'm not letting you do this is because I don't want you to wreck your shoulder.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get some hard-headed people that really want to push, and then they end up getting hurt. And then
and then you could be like, I told you so.
Try not to be like that, because then that just damages them even more. But then I've been fortunate the people that do end up kind of messing themselves up, they don't mess themselves up too bad, and they realize, yeah, Ray, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm trying to help. Sometimes you take a step back to take a step forward, and that's one of the funny things is people come from bigger gyms. They come
Sounds
over
like
here.
something out of a Disney movie. I'm not buying it.
But like Nico, for instance, that one guy I was telling you about who came here and I made him lift with the girls. Like, it kind of bruised his ego at first, but he's also like a great example of what can happen when you take a step back and focus on the fundamentals and then move forward that way.
It sounds like when clients come in, if they can't deal with having a certain level of humility, they're not going to stick around.
No, definitely not.
So now you have a whole culture of
Yes.
humility, and that is a really great place to coach from.
Yeah, it's huge, and that's definitely, they get that right away. I tell them up front, like, if you are looking for a cheerleader, I'm not that guy. But if you're looking for someone who's going to be relentless and help you be better, then we'll be a good fit. And people kind of weed themselves out that way.
So how do you use the progressions in a group setting? Like if there's cleans on the board, it's 5 sets of doubles or whatever it is, then and you have 15 people, are you having each person do a slightly different variation of a clean, or maybe one person not doing cleans at all and they're just doing front squats, or how do you mix it up?
That's a good question. So we actually allow people to like, for instance, I have this one lady, Mary. She comes in, she can't squat because her knees are messed up. There's always some way that you can scale the movement so that it looks like the regular movement, but for the most part, what we'll do is we'll just do the progression where she can go, and then wherever she starts to lose it, she just stays in that step in the progression. And for most of my athletes too, like with the clean, most people for at least the first 6 months, they're not allowed to pull from the floor or even from the hang. we teach the down and finish and the burner warm-up because we want people to learn how to drive with the legs and create that upper momentum from the legs and not from swinging this way, right? Everyone wants to lean forward in that dip because the back gets to play and their hamstrings get to play. Learning how to maximize the leg drive and then pulling under the bar, that's key. So I actually force people to stay there. Like, okay, you're still not driving the legs. That's where you stay for the first 3-6 months. And then once they get a little better, then they can progress and go from the hang. And then after that, they can go from the floor. Mm-hmm. That's how I progress people on the clean and the snatch.
Mm-hmm. Well, what does your programming look like here?
Right now, I program a lot. Like right now, we're in a CrossFit Open prep thing. So a lot of stuff we're doing is we have a lot of skill work. Like yesterday, we did single arm overhead squats with a dumbbell, and that crushed a lot of people's souls.
He likes to crush souls. He said that multiple times.
I'm a soul crusher.
We need to get some tattoos on you. There's something along those lines. Crushing souls. Do you there's going to be dumbbells?
Yeah, there's going to be dumbbells in the open. So I figured,
word on the street has it.
Yeah, I figure I need to set them up for success, right? So that's part of the program. We did that yesterday, and tomorrow we're doing dumbbell snatches. We're not going to see this yet.
So we know there's dumbbells, but we have no idea.
We don't know what it's going to be. It could be dumbbell Fran, which will be nasty.
I saw Turkish get-ups on the CrossFit main site the other day.
I think that'd be too hard.
In a Metcon.
I think that'd be hard to judge, though.
Yeah, could be.
So
I'm wondering what is unique that they're going to put in the open this year that they haven't done before in a Metcon. I happened to see dumbbells were on main site the other day, and so I thought that was very suspicious. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, you never know what Dave's going to throw at people. So I'm just trying to throw in all the movements that we know that we're going to show up, like toes to bar. People are terrible at toes to bar, muscle ups,
dumbbell toes to bar,
dumbbell toes to bar.
Yep.
Single arm toes to bar with a dumbbell.
We're not doing the open, so we're
gonna hold the dumbbell between your feet.
We're just gonna give Dave a bunch of ideas. I'm not doing it.
I signed up yesterday.
Tie some dumbbells to your feet.
Baby Masters for me. I'm old enough for Baby Masters.
Actually,
so I'm excited.
I just hit Masters.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Baby Masters.
Maybe I should do it.
But see, you still got to compete with guys like Nunu Costa.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. That drops me off. So
we derailed your programming talk. So walk us through your programming.
My programming looks a lot like .com programming. I'm a little bit more strength biased because most of my athletes are the 98th percentile of CrossFitters. I don't have a lot of athletes here. I've got accountants, I've got realtors, I've got nurses, I've got teachers, I've got just your average Joes, and many of them lack strength. About 98% of them can't do Fran RX, and so a lot of times we put a lot of strength emphasis. Like, for instance, today was a bear complex. We did 3 rounds of the bear. Nice. Got 20-minute time cap, and then after that, we threw in a 8-minute Metcon at 70% of your heaviest, and you had to hold onto the bar for the whole 7 rounds in order for that round to count. And then yesterday was this long 20-minute EMOM soul crusher. That was fun. Yeah, I mean, lately we've been kind of like in an open prep thing where we're just throwing things at them, but for the majority of the year, I do a lot like CrossFit football, or I think we call it CrossFit Power Athlete, where we do a strength piece in the front, but then the conditioning part is always related to that skill. So you're not going to see like a bench press, and then all of a sudden we're going to do like random push, like snatches and whatever afterwards. Right. Because then that's
a lot for somebody who's not highly experienced or skilled. Yeah. I've noticed that I've walked in to gyms before where, you have this really complicated strength piece and then a really complicated Metcon. I'm like, man,
that's not going to work.
Like, I don't even, like, for me to warm up for this workout is going to take an hour.
Exactly. I mean, you're like 5x5 front squat at the front, and then all of a sudden you're going to do this 20-minute Metcon afterwards. Like, where's the time to warm up?
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. We do everything. Like, I write these really detailed programming workout plans where it's got like a neurological challenge, it's got a general warm-up, and then we got the skill stuff for the strength piece. And the strength piece almost always goes into the Metcon if there is one that day. And that's how we run the majority of the year, just to kind of develop strength. And then when we're 2 months before the open, then it's like just lots of conditioning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, but I see a lot of people who are writing programs for gyms probably make coaching more technically difficult than necessary because of how many different skills are put in one workout. I'm like, man, just like let's do one difficult thing and make everything else simple.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not the games. This is these are people who they're They're sitting at a desk 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you shouldn't be putting pistols, bar muscle ups, and double unders and max effort snatches in the same workout.
Yeah.
That's way too much to cover for the average person. They're like, "What's a snatch again?" Like, like I always try to keep it simple, and everything relates to something else going down the pipe.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's been days when I throw away the entire workout and just spend 20 minutes on a skill. If the class needs it, like, oh gosh, no one can clean in this room. Let's just do cleans. Let's just do the burner warm up for 30 minutes. And I've done that before. And if you've ever done the course with Coach B, a PVC pipe is more than enough. Or if you've taken a level 1 course, 15-minute session with a PVC pipe, you're sweating. So, yeah, there's a lot of value with the PVC pipe.
Earlier, you talked about staff training, and we talked about continuing education and kind of how you got into coaching and went from knowing nothing to where you are now. Yeah. And that was a lot of just of your own hard work with just finding resources and just digging into them.
Yeah.
What do you do for your coaches as far as staff training? Like, how do you help your coaches get better?
They just watch Barbell Shrugged, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we do. We do talk about Barbell Shrugged every once in a while. We've been kind of on this new thing where we've been learning how to figure out like leads and sales stuff. So we've been doing a lot of sales training lately. But before
that's also important.
Yeah, it's an important skill so that I can go take a vacation, right?
But well, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, like sales is where coaching begins.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing a good job if you're not treating the sales process as part of your job as a coach, it's just I think people think that coaching begins when someone walks in the gym and is like, okay, I'm here for my class.
Yeah.
No, it's like, this is where you get to find out what their goals are.
Exactly.
This is your opportunity to motivate this person or
Yeah.
help them see where they could really go. Because most people, when they walk in the gym, they have no idea what's possible.
Right.
Like, how many of our clients have walked in a door at a CrossFit gym, they get in, and 6 months later, they're doing things they didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let alone had they seen a video of someone else doing it, they're like, fuck that, can't do that shit.
Yeah.
And now they're jumping on top of 30-inch boxes, and they're 66 years old, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And so I think that like the coaching the coaching piece in sales is this is your first coaching job.
Yeah.
It's free. They're getting a free coaching session with you.
Yeah.
And your job is to convince them that you can help them, achieve more than they ever thought they could.
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of that lately, teaching them how to listen to what the client's not saying.
Right.
Asking lots of questions, coming from a perspective of curiosity, coming from a perspective of being like an assistant buyer. Like, this is what we want to help you achieve. What can we do for you that's going to be the most benefit for you, even if it means not training with us.
Right.
We want to benefit them in that way. And a lot of it, again, it comes back to, why are you doing this? Do you do this just for the dollars, or are you here because you want to help people? And so kind of really
most people aren't coaching for the dollars.
You think, right?
There's more dollars other places.
Yeah.
There's definitely more dollars other places.
People are here because they want to be here.
But it is
they enjoy
sad.
being here.
It is sad. There are some gyms where the coaches, like the owners, are all about the cash flow.
Yeah.
And then you've got their coaching staff, they're struggling, and they're like, no one's teaching them how to do anything. And I've seen that around San Diego, and that sucks. And I don't want to be that. Like, for me, my whole thing here is I haven't taken a paycheck from the gym in years. I'm trying to create opportunity for my coaches and teach them how to coach and teach them how to do sales. And so right now we're in that. We're teaching them how to like just sell.
Yep.
Or like not really sell, but help people see what they need and help them get what they need.
Yeah, if the average CrossFit coach was way better at sales, there'd be more people doing CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good thing.
When we're not doing that, what we like to do is get in groups. Like at my peak I've had 6 or 7 interns. Right now I have 4. But we'll get together and we'll just practice coaching each other. Like, hey, you go outside. Okay, everyone else, you're doing this fault, you're doing this fault, you're doing this fault. You come back. Okay, now you're teaching the push press. Go. And then we play like that. And so it's kind of like the level 2 course. And if you haven't gone to the level 2 course, go to the level 2 course. It was a life changer for me, for sure. Learning how to see and correct movement. And so we practice those drills with my staff here. It's like, it's also valuable to learn how to demo faults. Like, coaches don't realize that. You should be able to demo what someone's doing wrong so you can show them, hey, this is what you're doing. This is what I need you to do instead. So we do a lot of that. We'll just practice, hey, okay, teach me the snatch. Or teach me how to do this. Teach me how to do that. And I'll sit in the corner and just take notes. Okay, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do with this, that, and the other. one of my goals for this year is to take myself completely off the coaching schedule as the primary coach and just be an assistant and the floater.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do, and I've been starting to do this, is I take notes when my coaches coach, and I say, hey, this was good, this we could do better, this we have opportunity to grow, and really pouring into them and developing them so that they can keep that quality of coaching.
Yeah, it sounds like your gym is seeking mastery as a group.
Yes.
You know, and the only way that you taking yourself off of the schedule is probably the best way to do that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people that own gyms or have been coaching for a long time, you know, the idea of not coaching class seems foreign. But if you can do a really good job of developing other coaches, you can impact way more lives.
Yeah. Case in point, we had Austin Maliolo and James Hobart walking to the gym at 6 a.m. today, and I wasn't supposed to coach, and my coach was here, and I was like so tempted to take over the class. It's like, no, I need to let Nick step up and let him do it. And he did a great job, you know. And that's one of the things I think as owners we need to be okay with stepping away and letting let our coaches do their job, and then be there to help them if they need to, and kind of give them feedback.
Definitely.
I think that's really how we build the next generation. And if you think about it, if I'm just trying to coach all my classes, that limits the amount of people I can impact. But if I can impact a bunch of other coaches, they can go impact their gyms, and you know it carries on. You know, much bigger impact that way than me just being really myopic and looking at my members.
Totally.
Only my members.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having some type of a scorecard for your coaches, where if they're coaching class, you can watch class and kind of just make notes, and there's a systematic way to do it. And then, say you have 5 coaches and you as the owner, so you have for each person, like if you coached the class and all 5 of them separately shadowed you and watched and scored you, and you did the same for them, then you could have a meeting where each person stands up front and then they say, okay, like everyone say what they saw Ray doing. You know, what did he do well? What didn't he do well? What can he improve on, et cetera? And then you get objective feedback from 5 different people. That way, it's not just one person saying, well, you could have spoke louder, or you could have, said people's names more often, or you could have paid more attention to this person because they were kind of left off to the side and they didn't get any attention, or whatever. They can say, well, that was kind of a one-time thing, and this guy, he's picking on me for one reason or another. But if you have 5 people and they're all saying the same thing, then it's like, okay, well, I can't not pay attention to it now. Like it's obviously a thing that I need to correct because you have 5 perspectives in this example.
I like that. I'm going to use that. I'm totally going to steal that and do that.
You totally should.
I totally will.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
CrossFitStronghold.com or rx2movement.com. I've been using that also. Just kind of, CrossFit's my thing. But sometimes when you say CrossFit, sometimes people they won't talk to you, and it sucks.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to see the goodness that CrossFit is if you come straight with CrossFit. So I'll say I just have RX2 movement because I do teach weightlifting, I teach gymnastics, I teach all kinds of stuff. I might even teach Zumba if people wanted it. But it's kind of like for some communities where they're so closed off to CrossFit, it's like I'm RX2 movement, and it doesn't look as scary. And I go in and I give them CrossFit, and they don't know it's CrossFit.
So it's RX, the number 2, movement.com.
Or CrossFitStronghold.com.
Awesome. Where can we find you on was it Instagram? And
Ray Regno, RayRegno, or RX2 Movement.
Yeah, give him a follow on social media. He's always putting up great videos.
True story.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show, dude.
Thanks for having me.
That's fun.